or death. We gas ourselves up, but we short on breath. Talking about we eating, but who we really cooking. Dreaming about greens, but ain't nobody looking. No land, no acres, no seeds in the ground. When the hunger hits, who's gonna be around? We starving every day, and it just ain't the food. Feeding the hood garbage, got 'em acting a fool. We flossing with rides, stunting with chains, but these bars we spitting just bring more pain. We guilty as hell, preaching all these lies, selling debt to the kids, and we acting surprised. We commercialize the pain, broadcast the grief, tell the youth to hustle, but hide the beef. We glorify the trap, invite them to the flames, just like Reagan brought the crack on planes. Back in the 80s when the streets got soaked, my people, my brothers, all got choked. Reagan said no trades, but we know the deal. He left us in the dirt, man, that shit was real. I was just a shorty watching it unfold, old enough to see how we got sold. War on drugs, but it was war on us. Cops on our necks, no love, no trust. They labeled us thugs, beast on the block, made us kiss the pavement while they cleaned our clock. Prison became business thanks to Reagan's game. Free labor is the truth in America's name. Slavery's dead, man. That's just a word. Read the 13th Amendment, it's still absurd. They lock us in cages, serving time for life. Double digits for wisdom, cutting sharp like a knife. I'm here to say, the chains in the air, it's time we break free, start showing we care. No more flexing for nothing, no more selling out. It's time to rise up, time to end the drought. Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. You know how we do this, we always start off with independent music. So this morning I want to start off with Cash Flow Harlem, Dear Black America.
Dear Black America, can I have your attention? Especially consumers spending their honest living. You may not know, but that money that you're spending on goods doesn't always have good intentions. By now, your uncle, aunt, your mama probably told you about Aunt your mama, how she was an ex-slave, mammy that Chris Rush pawn. But it's a lot more brands we should pull up on. Like, what about Uncle Ben? Remember, called them uncle, cause slaves couldn't be called Mr. Roster's picture on the front of the cream of wheat. But what about the worst of all, KFC? Colonel Sanders made a fortune, killed it after he stole a recipe from a slave, Miss Childress. Gave her $1,200 out of the billions of his worth, then became a sugar daddy for Miss Butterworth. It's more to be exposed out here. I mean, look at the clothes we wear. Allegedly Nordic could boast the slave ships he was brung on. The tree on your pair of Timbs is what we was hung on. And the logo that's been embroidered on Levi's. 2 horses ripping a slave from each side. Could it be propaganda or could it be facts? Wait, I get deeper than that. Remember we were small kids enjoying our life so much. Hot day, we would run to the ice cream truck. Once we heard the song come out the truck, we was fiending. Unbeknownst to the song's original meaning. It came from a racist man, disrespecting with a racist song called Niggas Love Watermelons. That ain't the only song that's in question. But in case you was forgetting, jingle bells, jingle bells, jingle all the way. Jingle bells was placed on slaves' necks in case they tried to get away. And the national anthem ain't an anthem for me. That's something I ain't never gonna say. Land of the free, but talking no refuge could save the hurling and the slave. Wait, speaking of slave, I just assume you understand why the main room's the master bedroom. Well, I hope so. And have you ever paid attention to the NYPD's logo? If you look clear on the pic, then you could see a man with a whip. Oh Lord, racist imagery literally on screens. Fashion, music, even with sports teams. It's all mark of the beast. Yeah, no justice, no peace. Destroyed with disrespects. Statue of Liberty, you next. But first, let's erase fake preachers. Using religion as a tool to mislead us, to deplete us. Man, I gotta leave this. One last mission, destroy the white Jesus.
Hey, That was Cash Flow Harlem. Dear Black America. Oh shit, I ain't been on here for a while. But I know it was just George Floyd weekend. Rise and Remember. I really want to talk about that, but before we get into all that, I want to talk about what's going on in Rochester, right? And maybe a lot of people don't know, so that's why I really want to talk about it. 50,000 went missing that was supposed to fund homelessness. Well, now that money is missing. And I don't understand. See, it's always when people are hurting, the communities that hurt the most, we get screwed the most. And that's what I'm not understanding is because the more and more we go on, you can look at even with George Floyd, how many people have died senselessly, after May 25th, 2020, 5 years later. I think they said there was 6,218 or something like that who died by police. But how many died in the community? Because I can tell you right now that we've had a lot of death. We've had a lot of death since 2020. And it wasn't just, you can say by the hands of police, you can say at the hands of our community. Fentanyl is a weapon of mass destruction. They don't talk about that. They don't talk about all the things that are happening in our communities with the kids, all the people that are abusing who we're saying we are here fighting for. We're fighting for our kids. Why do we continue allow things happening to our future generations? How many people out here, what's crazy is because there was a story that came out of Rochester, I think it was Thursday, about a dude that impregnated a teenage girl and had a baby. And the only reason why they knew it was him is because they had DNA evidence. And it's like, damn, how can people be silent when things like that happen in our community? And he's not the only one because it happens all the time. And and that's what's crazy is I made somebody take down a post because it was about George Floyd and Tony Clark was in the picture. And I said, damn, it's crazy how anybody going to talk about how during Dante Wright, he got pulled over by the feds. And that's when we found out that he was being charged with rape. Ask Damick. Ask Damick what happened in the Dodge Charger. I ain't lying. That nigga's and that's what's crazy is we allow these people, these predators. And now I'm starting to look at as our community, are we being preyed upon? Are we the food to make these people get to a higher level? And honestly, that's what I'm thinking about because there isn't no more middle class and rich and then poor. No. You have the rich and the poor. The rich and the poor. There is no more middle class. That's the one crazy thing that I can see, and especially in Minnesota, because they consider you to be in poverty if you make under $150,000 a year. Who's made over $50,000 in a year? Not many people are going to raise their hands. And let me get on with this because I'm gonna really vent later. So this is with Rochester, and they're talking about the missing funds for the homelessness.
And it's about to get worse as the city's overflow homeless shelter is set to close in just 1 week. ABC 6 News wanted to find out how vital these 40 overflow shelter beds are. And here are the numbers we found. Just this past March, nearly 1,600 guests visited the warming center at the Salvation Army. That same month, more than 1,000 people visited the overflow shelter, which is operated at the Salvation Army but run by Catholic Charities. Now, combined, nearly 2,600 people used those two facilities just in March alone. And thankfully, no one was turned away. But half of those beds are being shut down come June. And ABC 6 News anchor Maisie Olson wanted to find out why.
Robin, it all boils down to money and who's footing the bill to keep the overflow shelter here in town open. Now, with speaking with the parties involved, it seems like there was a lot of miscommunication about the $50,000 meant to keep this roof over people's heads. In the heart of the Med City,
I just try to live life one step at a day.
this is where Dwayne calls home. He used to sleep inside the overflow shelter.
They don't have beds. We sleep on the floor on the mat, but at least we got shelter, warmth.
But Dwayne's used to packing up his stuff, never getting comfortable.
We don't want people to not have a place to sleep at night and to end up having to camp again. And, you know, that's what will happen if we cannot continue to fund the overflow shelter.
But that's already happening. We know that there is a ban on camping here in the city of Rochester, and when big groups come together like this, that's when police get called, and that group has to disperse, even if there's nowhere else for them to go. It all stems down to money, specifically $50,000. According to the city of Rochester, it's meant to keep these overflow beds open, and it hasn't been touched.
The city's money had not been used. We found that out this past week. They had not known how to access it, so we can release some of that.
But Catholic Charities claims that $50,000 has already been spent.
If there is 50,000, cool. But my understanding was that actually went into a pool and was already drawn down from.
So what happened to that $50,000?
We had allocated this money and they didn't know how to get it.
The email I got from the city was pretty definite.
A miscommunication with lives at stake.
This one is a double layer blanket, and when you paint it, it stays warm. It rained on top on the outside, but the inside stays warm, not wet.
All people like Dwayne can do is keep living one day at a time.
Stay positive and keep moving forward. Good things will come.
As for the people that are depending on getting a roof over their heads, if they can't find room in the warming shelter, they're simply on their own. In Rochester, Maisie Olson, ABC 6 News.
And ABC 6 did reach out to Mayor Norton, in fact, right before we went on the air tonight to follow up on whether that $50,000 had ever been sent to Catholic Charities. Now, she says she met with John Myers on Monday, who claims they did not spend that $50,000, but are still planning on closing the overflow shelter. She adds it is possible the city cut Catholic Charities a check in the last few days, but whether the tens of thousands was actually ever spent cannot be confirmed tonight, nor can we definitively say that that will ever happen to close the overflow shelter.
And it's always the communities, I feel, that need it the most, that are always left hanging. And that's crazy to me. I will honestly say that's crazy to me. Yeah, because homelessness in Rochester and rural areas is out of control. And you know, a lot of people in those areas have that, not in my backyard, not in my backyard, not in my backyard. And why we can't sit here and complain about shit when we see things that are happening. And you know what's crazy is, that's why I really wanted to get into George Floyd, because it has been 5 years later, right? Everybody says that, oh, we've changed. But what's really changed? What's really changed? What's really changed? That's what I have. My question is for people is how, oh shit. Oh, I don't even know this person. That is okay. Do I know? I don't know how to go through it later. So I don't think I know them. And that's the whole crazy thing, is people not saying anything bad about them, but they I don't know why it's not coming up. Okay. So yeah, I don't get that shit, but everybody knows this is the 5-year anniversary, the George Floyd. And to be honest, that's why last week was a very hard week for me. And
it's been 5 years.
to be honest, I don't know why.
It's been 5 years since the death,
but it has. But I want you to listen to A.K. Kamara, and he talks about the 5 myths of what happened since George Floyd. And I want to get into that a little bit. And here you go with A.K. Kamara.
Of George Floyd. And I want to break down the 5 myths/hoaxes that still persist to this day. Number 1, that Derek Chauvin's knee was on George Floyd's neck. Now, this is the most pervasive of all of the hoaxes, at least in my opinion, because everyone repeats it nonstop. That even if you're someone that's like, okay, I think that there's something more than what was presented by the media, but I've seen the video, and from the vantage point of the person recording, it definitely shows that Derek Chauvin's knee was on George Floyd's neck. Based off of the evidence presented by the state, the medical examiner's autopsy report, there were no bruises or damage to the neck or breathing structure of the neck on George Floyd. So how was this possible? Well, it's because it's a vantage point issue. When the camera is pointed this way, it looks as though Chauvin's knee is on George Floyd's neck, but actually it's on the back of his shoulder. Now, I know some people say, well, you're just being semantic. No, people legitimately think that George Floyd was unable to breathe because the knee was on his neck. That is not what the medical examiner's report showed at all. That's actually not what the state even argued. Technically, the medical examiner said that George Floyd died due to his heart failing from the subdual compression and restraint of George Floyd. That's what the medical examiner said, not because of a knee on the neck.
This nigga wild.
Number 2, that this event in any way, shape, or form had any type of racial implications other than the fact that former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin is white and George Floyd is black. Now, why do I say that? How can I confidently say it had nothing to do with race? Because the state never presented such a case. If they would have had any type of evidence to show that Derek Chauvin was some type of virulent racist, they would have done it. They didn't, because that is actually not what happened. It just happens to be that Derek Chauvin is white and George Floyd is black. Right. Another thing that no one ever brings up is that the officer who was on the arrest record, like the actual officer said, you're under arrest, George Floyd, is a black police officer by the name of Alexander King. No one ever mentions that because it completely destroys the race hoax narrative. This was not a racial event in any way, shape, or form. But of course, all of the Marxist organizations that focus on critical race theory, such as Black Lives Matter, all of the race hustlers, of course they made it about race. And that's what people believe, that this was some type of racial event. It's not true. Number 3, that the hold used on George Floyd was either A, illegal, or B, something that was never trained by the Minneapolis Police Department. That is 100% a lie. The hold that was used is a technique known as the MRT, maximal restraint technique. And in that technique's training, it says that when you use this technique, you hold the person until EMS arrives on the scene. And that's exactly what those officers did on that day. So the question is, when did that happen? About 30 seconds into George Floyd being placed on the ground is when the call was made. In protocol with the MRT, which is once you put someone into this hold, you call EMS. And that's what happened. Now the question is, what took EMS so long to get there? On stand, you had Katie Blackwell, a Minneapolis police officer, who lied, saying, I've never seen that technique. It's not something that we've ever taught. Also, the Minneapolis police chief at the time, Chief Arredondo, also echoed the same sentiment. The problem is that Derek Chauvin literally had a training manual with the protocol of the MRT. And since Chauvin's trial has concluded, 17 former and current Minneapolis police officers have signed a sworn affidavit that yes, they indeed did receive training for the MRT. And there's probably a lot more who just don't want to put their name on paper because they're afraid of the political and career consequences that would come from it. Number 4, that somehow the events that occurred afterwards have been a positive for the black community or for the United States in general, for racial equality. The opposite is true. Since George Floyd died, there have been 17,000 more homicides among black Americans than in the 5 years before he died. So that means that unequivocally, the evidence shows more black people have died via homicide after George Floyd than before. Do you think that's a good thing or a bad thing? Do you think that that is a step forward of positive change when more black Americans are dying via homicide than before George Floyd died? And you might ask, well, how does this tie into George Floyd and racial justice? Well, it's because of all of the defund and abolish police movements that took place all across America.
That nigga's a piece of shit. I want to get into a little bit of Reverend Tim Christopher. So it went live last night, and he talked about it being the memorial, the 5-year weekend of May 25th, 2020. And I wanted to play a little bit of that. So I'm going to start here. He went last night about a little bit over an hour, but I wanted to play just I would say about a third of the episode.
Okay. Y'all know you're a liar if you say you wouldn't. So he grabs his firearm like he had a right to do, and they shot and killed him on a no-knock warrant. Wrong person. And nobody has ever been held accountable. They didn't say that the mayor hadn't been held accountable for it. The police officers haven't been held accountable for it. So you want to talk about a corrupt system? You want to talk about Derek Chauvin, the situation he's in? We can have that conversation. That's why I keep saying, let's have the conversation. See, they don't want to have the conversation because they know. They know that the situation with Derek Chauvin and George Floyd did not pop off on 5 years ago, on yesterday 5 years ago. They know it. Things happened before this. They know that a large part of it also played in how the Minneapolis Police Department treated people in the community. They know that, but they can't mention that. They can't tell you that. Liz Collins, even though her husband was the president, she can't tell you that. She can't let you know in her little film, The Fall of Minneapolis, she can never criticize. The only police she can criticize is the ones that took the stand. She'll criticize them and try to make them look stupid. But she won't criticize those police officers that were knocking people up on side the head.
Liz Collins.
The reason why the temperature was the way it was. She won't criticize them, and she won't let you guys know about it. Right. Because now you got to sit here and think.
Right.
If she lets you guys know how bad the police were, y'all got to sit here and go, well, I understand it, but it's kind of. But as long as she don't criticize the police, y'all sit here and go, oh yeah, this, the Fall of Man. I'll put this on a platter. And you put it on a platter, you walk around with
it. And they eat that shit up. They eat it up.
I can't put it on a platter.
They eat it up.
Because I know. I know there's another side to how this happened.
Right.
I know why she made this. And I know what it took for her to make this.
Right.
But she's not going to tell you what it took for her to make this. They don't tell you. Dusty won't tell you that part because Dusty don't know.
Yeah, because
Dusty ain't never been down there. Yeah. A.K. Kamara is not going to tell you, even though he's black, he ain't never been down there. So when y'all are listening to these people and you're watching the film, again, do yourself a solid. Do yourself a righteous. And get information. These damn computers y'all got and these phones y'all got, they can do stuff other than get on here and call me names.
Right.
They can get, you can do more than just get on here to call me names. This thing can do research. It really can. And you would learn some stuff off here. Listen to me again, people. Read the DOJ report.
Right.
Look up corrupt Minneapolis Police Department. Look up corrupt St. Paul Police Department. And understand what it took to get us here. Now, let me say this here. Hold on. Because I know people always sit there and go, but Rev, what about? You're right. The community has been shit. Yeah, you heard what I said.
Right.
People ain't doing right. Kids ain't doing right. Moms ain't doing right. Dads are not doing right. You're right. You're everything. I know somebody sitting back, and I know you've been waiting for this here part too. But if I sit here and I say that the police department has a problem, I've also got to sit here and talk about the community. I've got to talk about the 14 to 15 to 16-year-old boys who are buying these guns and shooting each other. They're not shooting nobody else. They're shooting each other and anybody else in sight because they can't shoot.
Right.
We got little girls that's having babies that shouldn't be having babies in the community.
Right.
We've got kids that are not going to school. And we got moms and dads. Well, hold on. Let me pull back on the dad for a second. We got moms, single moms, who are trying to raise these kids and trying to send them to school, and they're not going. So when they're not going to school to get their ABCs and 1, 2, 3s, they're not learning anything to get themselves to a position to where I was talking to Dexter Taylor last night. And one of the things that Dexter was talking about was how there was a time in the black community that you saw people going to work. Right? You saw, now I'm a military. Well, when I was with my, when we lived with my biological dad was a trash man for Shelby County, Tennessee. And every day I watched him walk out the door and go to work. But the only thing with my dad was alcoholic. That's how he died. My biological dad was a raging alcoholic. Back in those days, in the 60s, 70s, they didn't have places to where, especially in the black community, they didn't have places where you can go and get help. So my biological dad, they basically told him, and he was hospitalized for a couple of weeks. And when he got out of the hospital, they told him, you cannot have, they said, listen to us. You can never have another drink. Ever. And my dad just couldn't do it. He could not do it. And he started drinking again. And he passed. But before he passed, my mom had already married my stepfather. I'm a military brat. My stepfather's in the military. So I got to see my father go to work every day. I got to see both of my fathers go to work every day. And that's one of the things that we don't have in the black community that much anymore, especially in North Minneapolis.
There's a lot of fathers in the home.
A lot of black kids, a lot of black men, a lot of black boys are not seeing black fathers go to work.
Right.
They're not seeing it. Oh, I'm gonna be a rapper. I'm at 13, 14, and 15. I'm just gonna go ahead and get my corner and get my drug deals going. They're not seeing fathers leave the house with a lunchbox, with a paper bag with a sandwich and an apple in it, and going and putting in 8, 9, 10 hours a day, and coming home. See, another thing about the black community is the big piece of chicken was always for dad. You didn't eat. You did not eat. Dad always ate. When dad walked through the door, mom had a plate for him.
Right.
But the big piece of chicken was always for dad. Problem is, we don't have dads coming home sitting at a table getting that big piece of chicken. That's what our problem is. And because we don't have dads coming in, getting that, and maybe it's just another perspective to take with a grain of salt. That also has truth. I was reading. This is what's funny to me. But we don't have dads. I got to show you this. I love it. I love it when people who don't have a clue actually what they're talking about, when they like to come in and try to throw up something just to throw up something. Show you this. She said, maybe it's just another perspective to take with a grain of salt, but that also has truth. She's talking about Mary Franson. She's talking about, I just finished talking to you guys about this, all right? Mary Franson, and she was talking about the Minneapolis, the fall of Minneapolis. That's what she's talking about, right? And she don't realize that the grain of salt that she's talking about, a truth, is you only get one side. That's what I'm trying to make people understand. If she would have came back and said, well, that's the perspective. That's the perspective of that side, but I got this side also. Then I'll have respect for her. But I don't have respect for this person because I know this is one of the people. These are the very people that I tell you guys about. That only thing they want is one side of the story. Now, this person, she's not going to go and research this. She's not. There's going to be zero research coming from her. Zero. So if you're going to come for me, do the research first.
Right.
Because I guarantee you, if you do the research first, you're going to come back and go, well, I still believe what I believe. I'm not trying to change nobody's mind. You sit there and go, I still believe what I believe, but I kind of get what you're saying, Rev. That's it. That's the reason I put stuff out. If I see someone spreading something that I know has another perspective on it, wouldn't you want to go and look into that? But I realize you got people like this that don't. But anyway, as I was saying, we don't have black fathers coming home anymore. We got mothers trying to raise their kids, and most of these black fathers are in prison. When we talked, like I said, I talked about this with Dexter Taylor, who is sitting in prison right now, who's sitting there going, half of the prison is black men.
Damn.
And half of those black men that are in prison there have kids. So that tells me right there, we got a large number of kids that don't have family. I know Rush City has a large number of black men. A large. So that tells me that a large number of those kids, those dads up there in Rush City Prison right now, their kid is running the street. There's a large number of black men in Stillwater. So I know there's a large number of kids that are running the streets
without dads.
There's a large number of black men in St. Cloud. So I know there's a large number of kids running the streets. There's 3 prisons I just named, not including the workhouses. 3 prisons. And if in each prison, let's take each prison, right? And let's say there's 500, even though it's more, but just think about this for a second. It's out of each prison, there's 500 men in each prison. 1,500 men, right? And let's say each guy in prison has 2 kids. Do the math, people. Do the math. Let's say each man in prison have 2 kids. Give or take a kid. Let's say give or take a kid. How many black kids are running around? Think about it. How many black kids are running around just Minnesota? Just Minnesota without a dad. These are things I think about, people. Y'all, look. Yeah, I think about this stuff. I have to. I think about it all the time. That's a lot of kids without a father, being raised by mom and grandma. Correct? Now, see, here's why I get myself in trouble, because everybody get mad at me when I start telling, when I really start telling the truth. But think about what I just said, because I can guarantee you there's more than 500 black men in 3 prisons I just named. You know what? Let's just do this here. Let's say there's 500 black men. Just 500. Take away the 1,000. And those 500 black men have 2 kids. Let's do it that way. That's a lot of kids that's living without dad. That's a lot of kids that are running the streets. There's a lot of kids that are doing whatever they want and turning out to be whoever they want. There's a lot of black kids. That's what's wrong with the community. There's a lot of black men that are locked up.
Right.
And a lot of those black men that are locked up have children.
Right.
And those kids don't get to see a man walking out the door with a lunchbox or a sack lunch going to work. That, my friends, is part of the problem. We can sit here and we can say, "Oh, it's economy, it's this, it's job placement, it's this." We can say that. But one of the biggest problems is we don't have daddies coming home getting that big piece of chicken. We don't have daddies that we're sitting at the table watching him eat that big piece of chicken going, "That's my daddy. I'm proud of that man. That's my daddy." We don't have that. We don't have dads going up and down the streets, making sure that the kids are not doing things, teaching kids how to ride bikes and fly kites and things of that sort in the community. So, and because we don't have dads doing that, we don't get to have a role model anymore. Our role model is a dude on the corner who is rapping with gold teeth and gold around his neck, and he got a gun, and he got a nice car, and he's wearing Jordans,
Right.
with the best hoodies you've ever seen in your life, and with the hat all to the side.
Yep.
Those are the role models that we have today.
Right.
That's what's wrong with the community. Period. Point blank. And because That's the type of atmosphere a lot of these cops are coming to. Because that's what they're doing. They don't live in the community. They live outside the community. So they come to the jungle, stay in the jungle for what, 8, 9, 10, 11 hours, and then they get to leave. But when they're in the jungle, they treat everybody like it is a jungle. There's no de-escalation. I have never, let me say that, seen a police officer. No. Let me say that. Let me back up. Because it has happened a couple of times here lately. Because right there on Broadway and at the Cub Foods at Broadway. Hold on. Let me back up before I get myself in trouble by telling you something that's just not true. Up until lately, I have never seen a police officer de-escalate anything. I have never seen it. Up until lately. So when people are sitting there screaming and yelling, talking about, oh, these police officers, they had to leave and they had to have early. No, a lot of these police officers knew they had to change in the way they were doing things. They knew it, and they just didn't want to do it. They didn't want to do it. Somebody had a picture on here of a police officer on his vest with a blue blue line flag on his vest. I always thought that they were not allowed to wear those anymore. But police do what they want to.
Right.
And that's the point that I've been trying to make all night tonight. George Floyd didn't have to die. Derek Chauvin didn't have to go to prison. But George Floyd died because he was the guy. Derek Chauvin went to prison because he was the guy. It wasn't racial. I've never said it was. I don't believe it was racial at all. It wasn't. It had nothing. I don't care what Black Lives Matter and anybody else says. It had nothing to do. That had nothing to do with race. I know people sit there and go, well, George and Derek, they worked together and they didn't like each other and they was mad at each other. I don't believe that Derek Chauvin got up that morning and said to himself, if I see George Floyd, that black man, I'm going to kill him. He did not. No, this wasn't about race. We made it about race. We made it about race. We made it about a white cop killing a black man. We made it about a black man getting killed by a black cop. That's what we did. Even though now, that's another thing cracked me up about AK. So nobody's really talked about the actual other black man who is in prison right now. Right? Nobody really talked about him until lately, when they needed a caveat. They needed something. And that's what they broke out. Matter of fact, AK Kamara broke it out tonight.
Right.
Today in his little video. Talking about the black officer. They ain't never talked about this man being black. And all of a sudden, this is what they do. Oh, but he black. He never even really said he was black. But now we need something, so let's talk about the black man. Yeah, black man went to. Oh, see there? Black man got railroaded. See, told you. If Liz and AK and all them they want to bring him out as black, that's fine. I'll talk about him too. He should have never been. Nope. He should have never. Derek Chauvin is the one that did not have compassion for this man. Derek Chauvin is the one that sat there and said to himself, I can do this because the system is so corrupt, it's going to get me off. He counted on the system getting him off. So even though Chief Arredondo on the stand said that Derek Chauvin was not taught to sit on George Floyd's back. And I'm going to say that. I'm not even going to put Derek Chauvin on his neck. I'm going to put him on the back. Chief Arredondo said that Derek Chauvin was not taught to hold that man down handcuffed in that prone position for that long. That's what he said. He never said anything about what position, what maneuver that he was using. What Arredondo said, and then what Katie Blackwell did, is backed up what Arredondo said. That's what she did. So at the end of the day, when we talk about back in the blue, there's two cops that apparently y'all don't want to back. Let's back the blue. Let's back the blue. Anyway. All right, fam, I'm done. I'm a little bit over. Where am I? 21 minutes over. So Wednesday, I owe you 20. I don't know. No, I got a game. We got games starting up this week. So Wednesday, I think we got an 8 o'clock game. So I probably, like last week, man, we was running last week. So probably will not be back until probably Friday. No, sorry. Tomorrow, I got Winnie. Winnie will be here with me. And Brad will be here with me, and we're going to be discussing a case where this scientist for the police department got caught with doing something bad with like 38 cases, and now they got to basically go through and throw them all out. That same corrupt system that put Derek Chauvin behind bars.
So yeah. And I know that, like, even in the media, May 25th has been something that we have constantly been talking about. And, what has changed? What has changed since May 25th, 2020? Honestly, I don't feel like a lot. And honestly, I don't feel like nothing, if I can be honest. You sit here and you fight with the people that say you love or they love you, but then it's like, how can't people see the wrongs in our system? And that's part of the reason why people are allowed to do the things that they do. I mean, it's like, how many cases have we seen of child molestation or a child being molested or being touched, and it's by a church or a school, and we're seeing that more and more. And to be honest, as much as it's in the news, I don't think it's something that's new. I think it's something that's been here. In the same way that happened with George Floyd, it was always there. Just because people in, Buffalo, Minnesota, or Hugo, or, somewhere else in rural America wanted to see that, hey, we needed a change. We really do need a difference in Minneapolis. And, I hear all the people talking about, free Derek Chauvin. Free who? Listen, before George, there was a man who is a man now named John Pope. There was a woman named Zoya Code. There was a woman named Jennifer Day. And there is another lawsuit that's potentially about to come out that Minneapolis will pay because of Derek Chauvin and the MRT. That's the one thing that people don't want to talk about. It was always there. It was there. So it doesn't matter that, it shouldn't anyways that Trump got rid of a consent decree. Because we should be, as much as we pay for our police departments, and I don't care if you are, a progressive or moderate, we can all agree on safety. We might have a different outlook on it. We might have a different view on it. But that's one thing that we can all agree on, is that we want our kids to be able to go out in the streets and play and be safe. We want our kids to grow up and not be harmed because of, jumping on a trampoline or swinging on a swing set or eating McDonald's in a back seat. Nobody ever envisions to, die like that. And yet people still die like that. And what do? We don't do anything. I don't see people getting all in an uproar. I don't see people getting mad. I see a lot of parents make posts. Some parents that have got justice for their babies. And I'm not going to say accountability, because those same cities keep on doing the same things over and over again. We say we want change, just like Rep said. In St. Paul, you can't do no knock warrants. So, but in Minneapolis, you can. That's what happened in Bolero Flats with Amir Locke. Was what in my eyes was a psyops. It was all about something that people really didn't want us to get change or get reform, or let's be serious about a lot of these things. Minnesota's preparing for another wave of civil unrest. Oh, I agree, but and that's the whole point in my eyes. It has nothing to do with I feel like what George Floyd. I think it's to do with the effects of what has happened since George Floyd is what's going to make it be more of a civil unrest, is because when you look at it, what has really changed? The only thing that has changed is people's bank accounts. That's the only thing that changed. That is the only thing that changed, was people's bank accounts. We didn't change laws. We didn't change. We didn't add reforms. We didn't add affirmative action, or even none of that. Even what's crazy is I wrote a resolution proclaiming racism a public health crisis, and that still got nowhere. It still got nowhere. You know what I'm saying? So I want to talk about, they did a documentary. It was called 612 Darkness in the Land of Nice. I want to talk about that because everybody does talk about Minnesota nice, and it's not as nice as people think that it really is. So here is a news clip about the documentary that is set to come out, is 612 Darkness in the Land of Nice.
George Floyd! Say his name! George Floyd! Say his name! George Floyd!
Community members gathering at 38th and Chicago this afternoon for a moment of silence for George Floyd and some speeches from his family members. This Sunday marks 5 years since George Floyd was murdered by Minneapolis police, and people are gathering over the next few days to remember him. And new tonight, the world premiere of a documentary that tells the story of the young adults who sparked the world's largest protest in modern history after the murder of George Floyd. It's titled 612 Darkness in the Land of Nice. Fox 9's Leon Purvis spoke with the writer, producer, and director of this film. Leon?
Karen, the screening of that documentary just wrapped here at Justice Page Middle School, and the man behind the film says he wanted to find out how and why young people came together to make change.
In a city known for silence disguised as kindness, something louder broke through.
612 Darkness in the Land of Nice features young people rising up and making history after the death of George Floyd. One of the people featured in the film, Emma Peterson. She was 22 when former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin put his knee on Floyd's neck 5 years ago Sunday.
When George Floyd happened to us, it was frankly nothing new. I think what the circumstances surrounding George Floyd's death, with the pandemic, with people being locked inside and everything like that, I think that's really what made it pop off.
Writer, director, and producer Ziam Van Groth tells Fox 9 he was just one of the citizens on the street documenting history. He wasn't planning on making a film, but found it important to see what was going on and the movement he saw from the younger generation.
It's their courage and their decision. Everybody gets a chance to make history, and the kids and young people in the state of Minnesota, they decide to get out on the streets and get themselves some justice.
Van Groth wants everyone to never forget what happened on May 25th, 2020, but also find ways to heal.
The film is meant to make sure that the world knows that tragedy happened in Minnesota, but these are the organizations that are supporting young people to help move Minnesota and the nation forward.
And I asked Van Groth, are we better off than we were 5 years ago? And he says that we're not where we need to be. And then he added, ask yourself, what are you doing right now so we can be better 5 years from now? Live in Minneapolis tonight.
There's so much I want to say about that. May 25th, 2020, I think a lot of people woke up. I think a lot of people, and I won't say woke up, I think I would say just start paying attention to what was going on in the world. And especially for me, you know, I remember I was sitting here Sunday. We were coming back from, you know, my mom's, and it was around the time, you know, George Floyd had, you know, the call came in to Cup Foods and Darnella Fraser. About 8:30, we were home, and it was about 8:30 or whatever, and the Timberwolves were playing. And I felt like, you know, 5 years ago that at this very same time, I watched a cop in Minneapolis in an area that I grew up. I went to school down the block. I went to the old 7-Eleven across the street. We were kids, played at that park. You know, so I took it personal, and I didn't really want to see it happen to, even though I'm not doing a very good job, I don't really believe anybody's doing a great job at being a peace activist or a fighter for human rights, because we're losing right now. We're losing very badly. You know, that's the crazy part is, how can we celebrate when more people are going into pain and trauma every day? Every day they're going into trauma. You know, it's every day you're hearing another story about, you know, and it's always not about police brutality. You know, sometimes that has to do with our community. But I can tell you like this, we're not doing a very good job. What we are doing a good job is causing division and chaos, but we're not good at getting solutions. Because I will tell you right now, I've never seen so much waste and fraud in my life. And it comes to a lot of things. It's not just, you know, feeding our future. It's not just, it's everything. It's about homeless people. It's about, you know, autism. It's about education. It's about, and still all those things they've scammed. And they used Medicaid. They use so many different things to take advantage of the system. And yet a system that we go to, and we think that it's going to change itself. It's not. You know, that's the one crazy part that I seriously think about, right? Is especially in Minnesota, and because that's where I live. You know, right now we're in a budget crisis, I want to say, because we don't get a budget signed by July 1st. A lot of things could potentially maybe close down because we'll have a government shutdown. But what's really changed? Nothing. Even when it comes to policing, nothing's changed. You know, they said they got rid of no-knock warrants. No, they only did it with exceptions. They didn't prohibit. They didn't say, hey, we're going to sit here and we're going to get rid of no-knock warrants. They only prohibited it, with the exceptions. With the exceptions, it wasn't they didn't get rid of it. They didn't eradicate it. They didn't defund it. What they did is, with the exceptions. See, we sit here and we hear the language. We hear what we want to hear, but what we don't do is we don't read. A lot of people in Minnesota, they don't read. And I'll be honest, because if a lot of people did read the bills, like the omnibus or, so many other House files or Senate files, and they would see all these amendments, and then you'd be like, wait, well, they're going to throw it. What happened to this? So then they just reword it and just throw it in there. We have to compromise. Why should we, the people, have to compromise? Because we compromise every day. I know mothers that compromise to make sure that their kids are full and instead they're hungry. You have a choice. Everything's come down to a choice. Everything that we do in life, everything. It doesn't matter if it's bad, it doesn't matter if it's good. It all comes down to a choice. And then there will be consequences for that choice. Even if it was a good choice or if it was a bad choice, there's still going to be repercussions. Now, how do we get rid of that? When the system you're facing is like a glove, just boom, 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 boom. It's like a glove. So just because you get rid of one problem, you still got four more. You still got four. So then that other problem that you just eradicated, that you got rid of, it comes back because you never got rid of the core issues. You got rid of, and that's one crazy thing that I sit here and I think about, right? Over the years since the crime bill, since they came out with crack cocaine, and I will tell you like this, my mom and dad, back in the 70s, peace, love, and harmony, whatever the 70s was, hippies, the 60s, there was a lot of drugs that are already here. And now why? Today, since 2020, we're seeing so much more. You're seeing overdoses. A lot of the things that you run to the doctor for to get your kid, if they got ADHD, or you want help with their anxiety, or you want help with their depression, they make pills and add fentanyl in there to make your baby die. And you don't call that a weapon of mass destruction? When the same thing that you go to the doctor for your kid, so they can do better in school and that they can pay attention in life, you have people out here that take advantage of that and they'll kill your baby with just one pill. Not even just a whole pill, a half of a pill. And people don't do nothing. They don't do nothing. An article came out just yesterday in Rochester about Melvin Bush. I know a lot of people aren't going to know that name, Melvin Bush, but I know a lot of people in Rochester that will know the name Cicero. So, Olmsted County killed Cicero, William Bush. Now, this is the one thing that I always find like is such an issue, is that our systems are able to play a blame game. They don't want to take accountability and responsibility. They'd always want to point the finger at somebody else. So you have the medical service, ACH, in Olmsted County pointing fingers at whose responsibility it was. It was both of y'all. He was in your custody. He was in your care. So stop blaming or pointing the finger at, and just to try to salvage whatever you're trying to salvage and say, hey, we fucked up. We fucked up. And this wasn't the first time, because I will tell you right now that the minute either of those take responsibility, it opens up the floodgate for so much more. It opens up the floodgates. Because why isn't nobody still talking about Corporal Matthew Adamson, who took photographs of inmates while they were getting dressed, females. And yet, still the same shit happens. And now we have a whole homelessness problem in Rochester. And they're able to, because they still feel like, not in my backyard. It's not there. No matter how much you can't see a problem, you still got that problem if you haven't eradicated it. You can write a law criminalizing homelessness. Just like in Minneapolis, they can claim that they did this, they did that. Oh, we're getting rid of homelessness. But then when you look out in the streets and you see, independent people, journalists out here saying, well, hey, they didn't really get rid of homelessness. They just made it harder to see it. They didn't get rid of it. So just because you think a problem isn't there, it's there. Just like no matter how much that people wanted to celebrate at Rise and Remember, we still had parents that ain't got no justice. It ain't got no accountability. All they got is a settlement. A settlement where a city and a police department, they don't take blame. They don't take responsibility. They say, oh, we made a mistake. Here you go. Don't talk about that mistake that we made by killing your child because we didn't give you all this money. So you talk about the problem, we're going to take that money from you. Tell me that's not the truth. Even when, this is what's crazy, right? Because I've seen all these events go on for George Floyd, and I'm glad that they went on, but those cities still have problems. They still have, no matter how much you want to celebrate, no matter how many galas, no matter how many, you still got problems. Just because you want to put it out of sight so they can be out of people's minds, it's still there. No matter how much you want to put it out of sight and keep it out of the people's minds, it's still there. No matter how much you want to hide homelessness, no matter how much you want to hide gun violence, it's still there because we haven't got rid of it. It's still there. We have politicians that fuel it. And people don't talk about that. We have people like Amy Klobuchar. And I don't want to make it about Democrats and Republicans because I will tell you right now, even though I'm a registered Republican in Minnesota, I'm not a Republican. I don't think they either give you a ballot, you know what I'm saying, if you're a Republican, I guess I was there in the primary. But yeah, and it just makes me sad to see, even with black people, even with the people that I'll say this, right, even with the people that I fight to get justice, to get accountability, I fight with the same people that look like me more than I fight with the people that I'm going up against, because I got to fight with the people that look like me first to get to the people that are causing and can solve the issue. But people don't want to see that. They don't want to see that a lot of our black leaders are the problem. They're not a solution. If they were the solution, why didn't they get rid of racism when we seen it with Emmett Till? When we seen it with how many black babies, how many black kids, child's daughters, sons had to die for us to see that, hey, we have a problem in America, and it has to do with not only racism, it has to do with all this other shit. Classism, rankism, ableism, genderism. There's so many things that we got to talk about all these isms to actually get to the root of our problem. Because at first it was about racism. See, until the Civil Rights Bill, it was all about race. All about race. Because who at that time, before we had the Civil Rights Bill, who at that time was empowered in America? It was white men. Because White women had to fight for their rights. That's why we had the women's suffrage movement. And they still are fighting. You just don't hear about it because there's so much others. You hear about, you used to hear about Black Lives Matter a lot. And now you hear all this shit about, I'm not saying nothing bad against it, but immigrants. You hear a lot of things about the LGBTQ community. But what you don't hear about is the fight and the plight that is happening to the black community. Because I'm gonna tell you right now, when they first started this country, right, you had white men and then you had their slaves. You had some Native Americans that were here, but they were just treated just like, okay, well, this is their land, so we're gonna take it. We're gonna treat them and give them all this extra shit, and make them feel like they got somewhere. Make them feel like they're big. But they're not. They're just like me and you. Just because they have a reservation on land and they get the weed first. In Minnesota, I'm going to tell you right now, if y'all go in here into a dispensary and buy some weed, y'all are stupid. I'm going to tell you that. And I know there's a lot of people going to the reservations and trying to get the legal weed, blah, blah, blah. Listen, I'm going to tell you right now, I laugh at the people paying $300-400 an ounce. You're getting bamboozled. We have to tax everything. And I don't understand why, because we get taxed, but we don't get represented. So how are we doing taxation without representation? I don't get that. How can you tax people and not give them no representation? Because I will tell you, there's a lot of people in our communities that pay taxes and they don't have no representation. Even though we should have representation, we're forgot about. That's the one big thing that I will tell you that comes around. People are like, what? In America, if you're a felon, they look at you wrong. If you're I'm gonna tell you like this, and this is the fucked up truth. If you're not a white man, right? People look at you like you're different, right? America was built. And Todd, TC, my bad, Black Minnesota Regiment. I know him as Todd, but TC, I put something on, everybody was talking about Memorial Day. Well, how are you going to talk about Memorial Day and not talk about how Memorial Day was started? How y'all took that from Black people and made it to be something that it wasn't. So TC had sent me a book, or not sent me a book, gave me a suggestion of a book to read, and I'm going to read it. I actually found the Audible version of it, and I'm excited to read it. I know it has something. It's about Lincoln and how he freed the slaves, and there's a whole nother part inside that honestly we weren't told about. We weren't, and that's how it's always been. To be honest, it's always been that way of what's good for the goose is good for the gander, and it's kind of sad in some ways. It is really, really. I don't know what's going on with the budget. I know there's been some talks. But I honestly do not know what is going on right now. They are being quiet about that. I don't know why. That is something that should be public. But I want to get into, before we get up out of here, I want to talk about New Orleans, right? I want to talk about the jail crisis that they're having, about, people breaking out. Well, there was 5. First there was 10. Then they were down to 5. Now they're down to just 2 in New Orleans, and from the 10. And I want to get into that.
All right, welcome back in here to Live Now from Fox. I'm Andy Mack. After more than a week on the run, we're learning more information about the New Orleans jailbreak as they've apprehended 3 individuals today, meaning there are only 2 out of the 10 initial inmates that escaped from that Orleans jail facility just over a week ago. I want to put this up here on Live Now from Fox from the Attorney General there in Louisiana, Liz Morrell, saying captured inmate Lenton Van Buren now back in custody. He was picked up in Baton Rouge. Very proud of our DOJ Fugitive Apprehension Unit work with the partners there. Van Buren was originally incarcerated on charges of parole violation as well as others. And I also want to put up this from the Louisiana State Police saying 3 of the remaining fugitives taken into custody. Lenton Van Buren arrested in Baton Rouge. Leo Tate and Jermaine Donald were arrested in Walker County, Texas by the Texas Department of Public Safety. So some big information that we're just gathering here on Live Now from Fox about this jailbreak. And we've been following it very closely here on Live Now from Fox for some time. I just want to give you some more information about this as they did capture Len Van Buren, and then we're following the latest with 2 more. So that makes a total of 3 today, and 2 out of the 10 is still at large, as of course we are following it very closely. Van Buren, the 6th individual apprehended, was charged with 2nd-degree murder in connection with a November 2021 fatal shooting in New Orleans East. He pleaded not guilty in April of 2022. This year, Van Buren asked the court to represent himself. A mental competency hearing was scheduled for May the 29th. So, of course, we're also following just the individuals that are now in custody for aiding and abetting some of these individuals in this prison as we were following it very closely. It continues to go. And this stems back to a jailbreak as a total of 10 inmates escaped from the Orleans Justice Center after climbing through a hole behind a toilet in the early morning hours of May the 16th. Their disappearance was not noticed for several hours and started a massive, more than a week-long manhunt. 7 people have been arrested so far on suspicion of helping the escapees, including jail maintenance worker for shutting off water that allowed them to climb through, obviously behind the toilet there. And of course, we are following it very closely. And this was some of the image of these 10 individuals in the initial escape back on May the 16th. We do know now the latest update is that 3 more apprehended today. Still only 2 individuals still remaining at large, those being Antonio Massey and Derek Groves. The other 8 have been apprehended by police so far. So we're following all of this here on Live Now from Fox. Liz Morrell providing the update on what we know at the latest. Potentially starting tomorrow, we'll have another update. There's been significant criticism of the jail system and allowing this to happen, and
That's crazy as hell. Jail breakouts is a big thing nowadays. I will say that. It seems like we have more and more of those every year. And this one, this Friday, it'll be 2 weeks. So that is crazy. Crazy as hell. Crazy as hell. I wanted to talk about the special session a little bit. But also I wanted to talk about, there was a mass shooting also over Memorial Day weekend. It was in Fairmount Park in Philadelphia, and 2 were killed and 9 were injured in a mass shooting at a Memorial Day gathering. And it's just sad. That's what I'm saying. Like, people can't even enjoy themselves and do what they need to do and take care of their families without something bad happening.
I'm sure you've heard about this by now. Deadly mass shooting in Fairmount Park. 2 people are dead, 9 others injured, including 3 teenagers. It's right across, well, as Bob was mentioning, you got Boathouse Row and across the Kelly Drive there and up the hill is this Lemon Hill Park.
And Steve Keeley has been live on the scene there, and I'm sure we're learning more now that the sun is up.
Yeah, this just happened 7.5 hours ago, right in the middle of the 10 o'clock news. The 911 calls flooded the dispatch in Philadelphia Police Headquarters at 10:27. So there's the historic mansion that stood there since 1799, but never before has it been draped in yellow crime scene tape as the morning sun hits that yellow tape where a police stands guard on the scene. And as we pan further left, emergency services brought in these floodlights last night that you see at construction sites. 3 different crime unit teams were here till 3 a.m. and said they'd be back in the daylight because they have no clue how many shots were fired or how many guns were used. And notice the porta-john with the door open. Don't be surprised if we hear there were bullet holes through that and somebody ran out of there for their life. The gazebo, you see the food and the drinks and the barbecues at every picnic table throughout here. And look where the other lights are. You can still see the lights illuminated there. That tells you how widespread this crime scene was, with maybe 1,000 people here at the time when the shots rang out. And we asked the police commissioner when he got here what he knew, and he said it was just limited. But look at the video. You see so many ambulances were sent here. Every highway patrol officer was sent here. They were sending everybody on duty at the end of the Memorial Day weekend to get out here and help as many people as possible. And the number of wounded kept growing as the sources kept calling us, and it got up to a number as high as 11. 3 juveniles among the 9 people wounded who are all stable. But sadly, we had 2 adults, a woman and a man, shot and killed here last night. The big question, how many people were firing guns? And what do you know about the guns that were fired?
We don't know yet. We can hear multiple rounds from stuff that's been already posted on social media. The team will dissect that. We have our team up there. Crime scene is now going through, looking at the shell casings. We'll be able to determine, if it was one weapon or multiple weapons. But it's pretty rapid fire, so we're going to be pretty confident that there probably was a switch on this guy. We'll go through all of the social media stuff that's come after and prior to see if there was anything that we could have missed.
So I get here minutes afterward, and I start seeing people that were running out of their shoes, running away from their cars, not working because all the cars were backed up through the driveways here. And you look at this Dodge Challenger, and we're going to give you a live look at that when we see at the bottom of the hour. And this young man told me he crashed off the road and went down the hill toward Kelly Drive. And you'll see that predicament that car's in. As we come back to a live picture, this car with Maryland license plate just left here. Philadelphia police for a while were towing every car that was abandoned on the scene because they don't know if it was among the victims who were killed, among the victims who were wounded, or maybe among somebody who was doing some shooting. So they took that in as evidence on both sides of the park. But we saw at least 3 cars that look heavily damaged, and we're seeing signs of car accidents, fender benders, because it's dark out. There's no street lights on all these driveways. You can imagine the panic as this gunfire was going off like a machine gun, in the words of the police commissioner last night. Alex, Mike?
Oh, my goodness. That's the field they're going to have the big FIFA World Cup celebrations, a lot of them up there. Of course, that's not till next summer.
Wow. We just keep on having deaths, man. I can just say that. But I wanted to talk about, too, is that, I'm talking about budgets. Trump wants to get rid of Job Corps. I did try to go when I was younger. I was like 18 or whatever. When I was headed down the wrong road, I did try to go to Job Corps. It wouldn't take me or whatever, but he wants to get rid of that funding, and I want to talk about that for a little bit here.
Cuts in President Trump's budget that passed the House last week is to an organization called Job Corps.
This program is 61 years old, and what it does is it offers educational and vocational training to Americans between the ages of 16 and 24. Now, our Corin Hoggard talked to more than a dozen graduates today. He joins us live from the St. Paul site. So, Corin, what's the biggest fear about these potential cuts?
Tim and Kelsey, all of these folks walked away from Job Corps with something valuable, whether it was a job skill that they still use or maybe just learning to be a responsible adult. And so they're worried that the government is kind of pulling up this life ladder. Job Corps meant everything for a lot of the 3 million people who've used it as a stepping stone since 1964.
I would probably be in jail right now. I was homeless and I had nowhere to go, and I was 16, turning 17 years old, and it completely changed my life.
Dante and Renee Rodolph met at Job Corps and built their own American dream out of the ashes of their former lives. The program puts a roof over the heads of about 50,000 youngsters every year. It helps them get a high school diploma or a GED. It teaches them trades and even how to drive.
One of my dreams was to become a truck driver, and now I'm living it. And I've been driving truck for 13 years. And if it wasn't for Job Corps, I wouldn't have been able to get my driver's license even.
More than a dozen graduates told me Job Corps is where they learn structure and responsibility and even some basic life skills.
I learned that you were supposed to dust baseboards. I didn't learn that at home. I didn't know that was a thing you were supposed to do. Job Corps taught me that.
But the program costs more than $1.5 billion a year now. The Trump administration says it's financially unsustainable and called it a failed experiment. Its success stories are hoping for a reversal.
Job Corps means everything. It means promise of a bright future, promise of hope, and the ability to pursue a brighter path.
The future of Job Corps, and about 300 folks here at this site, is now in the hands of the U.S. Senate after that budget bill passed the House last week. Live in St. Paul, Corin Hawker, Fox 9.
Hi, my name is Tami, and I would like to give you a few reasons.
Crazy, 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 crazy. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. It just seems like we're just having more and more and more and more things they want to get rid of. I don't know how bad that is for our people. I don't know how it is for us. You know what I'm saying? Us cheap people, that's what I will say. I call us cheap people, poor people, people that ain't got shit. There's a lot of things happening. You know what I'm saying? I'm just telling people to take care of yours. Make sure, you're paying attention to what's going on. And it might not be everything. It might be, what's happening with our school districts. It might be what's going on with, our health care, whatever. There's always something that we could be out here fighting, and we got to be coming together as people, but also we got to be educated. We got to make sure that each and every person is informed and making good decisions and making sure that families aren't being left behind, and especially our children, our loved ones, our kids. Because it did give me, past week gave me a lot of time to self-reflect, and especially what was going on the last, 5 years and what's changed. I wrote a poem. Let's see if I can pull it up. See if I can pull it up real quick. Because I did write a poem. That's honestly one thing that I can say is like a lot of things have Jacob Pry. Yeah, looking at the memories, it kind of, this shit kind of really did a number. I will say that it definitely did a number. But I said 5 years later, and we still can't breathe. May 25th, 2020, the day my soul cracked. The day the world saw the truth and still turned its back. I watched their need choke the breath from a man. Watched the system say that's just part of the plan. I seen badges bleed the block, no remorse in their eyes. I seen killers in suits wear a government disguise. I seen money pass hands like prayers in court, while mothers buried sons and justice came up short. They screamed, no justice, no peace. I don't know what I screamed it. They screamed, no justice, no peace. I screamed it too. But 5 years later, man, we still ain't through. I ain't seen the change they promised that day. Still marching, still crying, still led astray. It's going the wrong way. Not doing a very good job. I ain't seen the guilty truly take blame. I ain't seen the crooked rise while we drown in pain. I seen politicians play both sides of the fence, smiling for cameras while they sit on the fence. They eat off our chaos, feed on our hurt, while another black body gets buried in dirt. Where the justice at when Memphis lets them walk? Where the peace at when Grand Rapids stalls the talk? Still no answers, just more tears on the floor. Another year gone and we still at war. But I ain't hopeless. Now I burn with a flame. For George, for Brianna, I remember their name. This pain's my weapon, these rhymes my fight. I write for the fallen every single night. 'Cause 5 years later, we still can't breathe. But I swear in my life, we won't ever leave. You know what I'm saying? And I just wanted people to honestly, that there is something else out there. And it's not maybe for everybody, but it is for us. And we can get to accountability. We can get to truth and transparency. And we can start to become a village again. And I honestly feel like if we honestly have conversations and we talk about our problems that are going on in our community and we be open and honest about that, I do believe that we can get to a greater agreement. We can, because I know everybody agrees on it, is safety. I won't take nothing away from that because I honestly believe in everybody's mind is that that's the one thing that we can agree on. We don't all agree on what it looks like, but we can all agree on that we want justice and we want truth and transparency. No matter if it's ugly, no matter if it's the good, the bad, the ugly, we just want the truth, and let us deal with that. We don't want a narrative. We don't want to be led down. And I feel like that's the way that America has been led, is to believe that we're working on justice. We're working on equality. We're working on making sure that everybody is seen the same. And that's not what's happening. So with that being said, I'm going to get up out of here. I hope y'all have a great Tuesday. And win or fail, freedom or jail, heaven or hell, wish me well. And I'm going to get up out of here. Here is Cash Flow Harlem. No justice, no peace.
Every time I turn around, it's a killing. Cause being black or brown, you're the villain. What they want from us is trying to get ahead, and we end up dead or in prison. What they really want from us, no justice, no justice. Oh, what they really want from us, no justice, no justice, no justice, no peace.
It was Freddie, Sam, Corey, Eric, Philando, Ahmad, Steven, Kenneth, Amadou, Jonathan, Christian, Terrace, Sean killed him a day before his wedding. Jamal killed him while he was in handcuffs. Mike killed him while he had his hands up. Kamani, Ramali, Phillip, Alton, about 3 Kevins, about 2 Jordans. John, Laquan, Bathon, Stephon, Tony, Tamir, Elijah, Antoine, Isel, Terrell, Dauntre, Akai, George. For him, set the country on fire. Timothy, Patrick, Paul, Tyree, Quintonio, Darius, Jeremy, William, Anthony, Dante, Oscar, Kendrick, Keith, Daisy, Walter, women like Sandra, Betty, Rihanna, India, Michelle, Tatiana, Tanisha, Rika, Natasha, Pamela, Janet, Megan, Corinne, baby Ayana. All that we lost, your name live on. Wasn't killed by a cop, but I can't forget Trayvon. Can't forget Emmett, and all of those we lost to the beast.